What is up, everybody? BobbyFi with my man Eric Sheets Haber, and gonna try to talk a little bit of NBA tonight. It's Sheets looks like he did okay last night. I'm only playing one lineup. It's been a pretty awful streak as far as DFS goes. I mean, other than maybe when I was playing a little more heavily, it was worse. But this has been a really, really awful couple months for me. And I'd love to turn it around. I did have a couple of good wins in the NBA. I had a decent game day Friday last week, and then I had a nice opening night, and I think I made like 10x my money that night. Other than that, I don't think I have a winning night, and then I only playing during the weeks. But it's been a frustrating start, so I'm hoping to turn it around tonight. Usually the NBA, I get a better feel in the middle of the season, but like this is a tough season. There's just so much more with resting and injuries than there has been that we're used to. We're not used to new players coming in, and we need to find ways to adjust. And it was weird because I loved my lineups last night. I thought there was no way I wasn't at least cashing deep in both tournaments. And just at the end ended up sort of bubbling-ish the FanDuel one and then falling a little bit out in the DraftKings one. And it's just frustrating, but ready to get back on it tonight. Sheets, any sort of initial thoughts on this slate? And
no, I noticed that there's one team that's a bunch of guys popping. I presume that somebody's out. I guess we'll talk about that in a bit. But I just wanted to not to be a therapist or anything like that, but just from a math perspective. I mean, just remember that you're the type of player that plays aggressively and plays to win. And so it's just the way results distribute. You're just going to have more. You rate to have just more runs like that than someone like me who plays usually more conservatively. I mean, I've run hot to get there recently. You know what I mean? So that's just and so that's I know you don't want to hear it, and I know that doesn't help you, but that's simply the case. I mean, that's the math behind of being an aggressive GPP player. And you talk to any of like the top players, they'll all show you graphs just like yours. If not, maybe even not quite as dramatic because you're even more aggressive than they are. But that's just the way it's going to be.
I saw. I'm not going to name who it was, but there was a DFS guy I know who went 5 weeks without having a winning night, playing every day, pretty much max entry everything, and didn't have one winning night. Cost millions of dollars to him, and still by the end of the year it meant nothing. At the time, it hurt. That's what he told me. So. All right. Let's get into it. We're going to try and correct it. I appreciate your thoughts. We'll pull up your screen and go game by game. It's a monster slate. I love these slates, as you know, in general. One thing that's frustrated me a little bit this year, and it is sort of not their fault. I actually like the way that DraftKings has sort of adjusted after the first week for the pricing. But it is frustrating when everybody is, I mean, it's interesting when everybody sort of rates exactly the same and costs exactly the same. And you feel like you're just looking for that slight little outlier performance, which is, something we can generally be good at, but it's harder earlier in the season to really pick those situations. And guys who we're not used to seeing priced up are just, a guy like Paul George, who's just as viable as a guy like Kevin Durant. I mean, he has more fantasy points this year than Kevin Durant does. It's just, it takes your mind a minute to get around that. But when you really look at it, I mean, look at even projections, the top rated guys I don't remember them ever being so bunched up. So that's the issue, because there's going to be an absolutely incredible amount of value today. So we're gonna have to figure out which of the top end guys.
I did want to shout out. There was actually a guy in the Discord who just joined recently who did really well yesterday. I forgot his name, but he did really well. And the other thing, again, this is an early look, and I encourage everybody to get there live. And what I did yesterday, I can't promise I will do in the future with respect to updating projections after lock. I knew in advance that there was going to be a gap where we knew news was going to come in, and I was actually going to be available to do it. Like, so I was able to update after the Phoenix news came in. But just to be totally honest with you, I mean, that's probably not a likely occurrence. But NBA is going to require you to be on top of that type of stuff. Now tonight, maybe not so much because there's a whole bunch of 7 o'clock games. You know what I mean? But just a little bit of an announcement. I'm only human. I can't be everywhere. So I'll usually try to put one set of projections up now, which means almost nothing. One up just before we go live, which is at 6, and then basically between 6 and 7. That's when our money is made, and that's when your money is made. So I encourage everybody to look at this recording to get a view of the slate, and make sure you're there during the live stream.
Yeah, a little shout out to Frankel Bank last night for having a huge night. That's who I think you were thinking of before.
Yes. Yes.
Just an absolutely almost a really big monster night where he could have had a shot at the 88 as well for 50K. So he had a really nice night. So shout out to him. Good job to all the new guys, Prince, I think, who joined. Rhodey was doing well. I don't know where he ended up, but I think he was doing well for a while, as usual, going through all of the fades. And if I just did this and this and this, but either way, good job, Rhodey. Obviously, if we all made the perfectly optimal plays every time, but you got another nice night, it looks like. So congratulations on that. And with that said, let's get to it.
So Portland, Cleveland, this is not one of the games that is standing out for me. I always like to do it by spend ups and spend downs. So on the spend ups, I'm really not getting to too much on either side. I'm not getting to Lillard at 9,700. I mean, he's probably like, and I agree with your assessment, by the way. That was a pretty accurate assessment, at least based on my numbers. Also, is that it's very, very bunched as far as ranking these guys today.
Right.
And Lillard and McCollum to me is like outside the top 10 for me. So I don't think I'm going to get there. And Cleveland, not really as far as spend ups go. When it comes to value plays, even that, I mean, the closest thing I can come up with is like a 4,600 Norman Powell from Portland. Aside from that, and maybe Larry Markin at 5,400. But aside from that, I'm not getting much.
Yeah. So one thing that's encouraging. Okay, so starting with the obvious things, Lillard is one of the guys for me. On FanDuel, he's a guy I would consider stronger. I think it should be noted again. I'm just going to keep pointing this out. Portland's only played in 2 games that were within 10 points this season. Every other thing is like 20 to 30 and just massive blowouts. So we almost have to throw the numbers out for a lot of those games. And Lillard rates as close to going 5x of anybody 9,500 as for me as just about anybody. So he's on my list, but again, not near my favorite. Not an ideal dream matchup, but always can get hot. I do like the Norman Powell play a little bit, but I think there's other guys I like better. So I'm going to just sort of probably leave it on this slate. On the Cleveland side, I think it's interesting how much how aggressive Markkanen was with no Kevin Love out there. And yeah, it was a really good matchup against Charlotte, where this is not a really good matchup for him. But he shot 7 for 19 and put up 41 fantasy points still.
4,100 or whatever he was. 4,500.
No, he was at 53.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah, pretty much same price he is now. So, if you like Markkanen the other night, it's a little different. Like, in the matchup's nowhere near as good, but you're going to probably get minutes and shots out of him. He's 5,400. I think Markkanen is definitely a reasonable play. I think Colin Sexton is a reasonable play. And I don't think I'm going to go to Rubio, but he's been like picking apart offenses and just not putting up enough. I mean, it's hard to play a backup guard and when you've got 3 guards, and I know he plays alongside them sometimes, but I think it's going to be mostly Markkanen for me on the Cleveland side. And that's probably my favorite play in this game as we stand. Markkanen versus Triple J, who just cannot keep himself out of foul trouble, is kind of an interesting debate, because I think Triple J, I mean, he was crushed. He had 19 fantasy points in the first quarter last game and ended up with 21 because he got picked up 5 fouls. Markkanen is an interesting one for me. So probably my favorite play in that first game.
Toronto, Washington, and I like, by the way, all these games are starting at 7:00.
Yeah.
Toronto, Washington, one of the top, 10 value plays, whatever, like a bunch of them are coming from a different team, but one that's coming from this game is Svi Mykhailiuk at 3,700. He's rating for me, at least now, is like the second highest, actually tied second, third, fourth point per dollar play on the board. He's also looking to get a bunch of ownership as well. So that's the first thing I would look at. The other thing is Fred VanVleet is certainly in the mix of all the guys that that are decent plays. And as a matter of fact, I mean, from a price point at the position, he's kind of stands out on his own in that level, and DraftKings at least. So I do like Fred VanVleet, and I like, and I'll just say that Svi rates to be a good point per dollar play. I don't know if I would like him, but he definitely looks to be a good point per dollar play. And then on the Washington side, at least now, I'm not really seeing all too much. So why don't you take it away?
Yeah, this game is a game people would have thought would have been a high scoring game. I think when they played last time, it was something like there was like 30-point higher spread. I think people realize these teams play completely different than they have in the past. So that's probably worth noting. I think everybody on Toronto is going to be really popular. Svi is, look, that's fine. I hope I'd rather play. There's other guys I'd rather play at 3,700 in general than him. Somewhat shooting reliant, and he did have 5 assists and 5 rebounds the other night against the Knicks, and he played 1,000,000 minutes. I don't think that those minutes are locked into him. Everybody, looked at the Banton play the other day, and he played 8 minutes.
Yep.
And that was the one we got away from. So
Yep. That was.
Svi may be a somewhat of a version of that today. I just think it's worth like keeping an eye on. Washington doesn't play big, but Kem Birch, if they did go a little big, I mean, he played 30 whatever minutes the other night against the Knicks, who obviously do play big. But I don't think he necessarily would in this exact spot. But with the games we haven't had no Scotty Barnes, they've played big teams, so it's hard to know what they would do against Washington, a team without traditional bigs, because he's played 29 and 31 minutes. At this price, I think I would have some interest there. I personally don't understand I was all over the Anunoby thing the other night, and I will still say this price is too cheap for him. But when you're going to start talking about guys who are going to be 30 to 50% owned or even higher on FanDuel, I'm totally okay jumping off of a guy that high. But yeah, just basically, I would have considered OG and Gary and Svi all right off the bat. But I don't know. And Van Vliet, I mean, are we really saying Van Vliet seems like an obvious like play at 8,500? That's not like a good price for him. He can get there. Don't get me wrong. He's put up, what does he put up? He put up 45 the other night against the Knicks. He put up 50 that one game against Indiana and 50 the game against Chicago. Other than that, he's been consistently in the 30s or 20s. But some of that's due to do with blowouts. So it's a little tricky to figure out. I mean, I find these guys fine, but I have no idea why the early projections have them being so drastically high owned that my initial thoughts is just not play them very much. Gary Trent is another one. He did take 22 shots the other night against the Knicks. I don't know how they got so many shots off against the Knicks. I guess it was just a really tight rotation. But it seems like all these guys had like their season high in shots. He also had 4 steals in that game. But I do like Gary Trent at 5,100. I think that's very reasonable. So I think he might be my current favorite along with OG. But the problem is OG, again, you get the crazy high ownership. And it's just hard for me to have a ton of interest. And like you, I mean, look, you can always do the weird reach on the KCP thing and hope things go your way. You could throw in a Bradley Beal play, and I think that they can always certainly pay off. Bradley Beal at 96 is reasonable enough, but not like the greatest play. I just think I'm probably not as interested in this game as maybe the masses are. And I know they don't love Beal, but they do love the Toronto side from what I can see so far. And I'm just looking for other ways around it. I don't think these guys are locks.
I agree. I this really early. I don't even have Anunoby as anything. I mean,
yeah. I mean, his projection that I'm looking at has him projected to 5.5x. So it makes sense. Okay. But just that kind of ownership is a little bit okay. Maybe let's pump the brakes a little. That's what my feeling is.
All right. Knicks Pacers. Watch for who's playing, obviously, with Indiana. Julius Randle is one of these guys that are within that bunch of players who I think is playable tonight. I do like him. I have Sabonis maybe a little bit below, just because of his price. But again, I mean, you used to playing 10-1 for Sabonis, maybe not, but I used to have this theory that if you were 9-9, he'd be much lower on than if he was 10-1, just because of the 10K thing. But even still, that's pretty expensive anyway.
He's not going to be owned anyway.
Yeah, so he's not. He's just a little weaker as a play goes, as far as I'm concerned. As far as values go, just not much. I mean, really. I mean, there's just so much value coming out of Minnesota. You know what I mean? That I don't know where I'm going to find anything in the Knicks Pacer game to rival that. So it's going to be probably either Randle or nothing for me.
Yeah, I like the Randle play. I'll just take the overs on basically all the numbers that are projected for him because I think they're too low. Indy's looked absolutely terrible defensively so far this season. I know Randle's had a couple games that we would rather, games we don't necessarily want, but in general, I think he's in the 50 plus range more than most. And I think he's going to be low owned today. So I have interest in Randle for sure. And if Brogdon's out, I'll revisit Sabonis, but as of right now, I'm just looking at it as Randle in this game for me, or basically nothing else. And I'm a little surprised the Knicks are a 1-point underdog in this game. I would bet the Knicks outright to win. That would be my personal take. Indy is really bad.
If Brogdon is out, I think we also would probably have to revisit TJ McConnell.
What's his price now?
I don't know, probably like 8K knowing DraftKings.
No, he's 5,100. Yeah, you're right. We'd have to revisit. I mean, I think Brogdon, I have him currently as probable, but
okay, I'm sure he's.
But I'm not sure. It's a hamstring, so it could always be. They could warm up and it could be bad. So, yeah, I agree with you 100%. We would definitely have some interest in McConnell if he's out.
Celtics, Magic. I mean, not too much, right? I mean, I have to think that they're better spend ups than Tatum, but he'd be my favorite. And as far as value goes, I mean, want to play Jalen Suggs? I don't think I'm going to get to too much Mo Bamba today, although I can't quite figure out why. Maybe his price went way up. So this game for me is kind of a yawner. You like anything here?
Yeah, well, Mo Bamba's only once hit value for this price this season, and everybody's been raving about how good he's been. So I wouldn't prioritize that. I always
you like Wendell Carter better, right?
Well, he's cheaper.
Yeah.
I mean, Mo Bamba is going to have the big fantasy games when he blocks a million shots and stuff, but I think they're both. I've been high on both these guys, and I didn't give up when everybody thought they sucked. And people got to stop saying that about 20-year-old kids as if that's who they are. Ever, the Boston side is.
By the way, Cade Cunningham sucks. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
That did hurt me last night. The locking in Cade probably.
Yeah, but it hurt everybody.
On DraftKings on FanDuel I have him locked in too.
You only played like 37 minutes, right?
He was so bad. And it's going to happen with these rookies. Yeah. And Jalen Green was really good at the end of the game. Yep. Anyway, but so the Boston side is interesting because there's all this stuff. Marcus Smart is talking about how Brown and Tatum don't, and it's true, off the dribble, these guys are not like the same teammate shot creators that a lot of the other stars are in this league. And the team Boston has been a terrible team because of it, is what Smart was saying, that they don't want to make the pass and all this stuff. And the teams are just trying to play them to make them pass, and they won't pass. I don't entirely agree with Marcus Smart, but I also don't know if after all this stuff's coming out exactly how it's going to play. I could see one of these guys, probably Tatum more so, being like, okay, I'm just going to completely take over a game if this game is close. So I think they're interesting, but they're fringy for me a little bit. I may revisit that because I do think a lot of people are going to play Al Horford. Look, the guy just puts up 40 fantasy points every game. I probably am not going to do it tonight against a pretty adequate-ish front line, the kind of athleticism that may give him a little bit of trouble, and probably is quick enough and long enough to close out on him on those little mid-range shots that he loves, or even the three-pointers where he can sort of sit at the top of the key. I'm personally like not as high on this game, and it's something that is a game that I could think about coming back to. One thing we need to talk about is Cole Anthony has really, really shown some upside a lot this year. He's having a tremendous year. He's really taken the reins, and everybody thought Suggs would come in there and take over everything, and it's really been his show. I know his price is getting up there, but I just think he's worth mentioning as a potential. You're going to be looking for upper mid-tier guys, because there's this value out there that, these 4K guys and all that stuff that I mean, even the Svi we mentioned already, or even the 5K guys like Trent, Josh Hart later, there's a few more injuries that we're waiting on. There's just a lot out there that's going to make you be able to spend down and pay up for 2.5 spots of your positions. And Brown and Tatum at no ownership are semi appealing to me, but not my favorites.
Okay. Moving on to Philly, Chicago. I presume that I'm not presuming anything actually. What do they have for Tobias Harris out again? All right. So I think that Embiid is kind of a smash here. I have him rated as just one of like 5 or 6 guys, but with no Harris and no Embiid and no Harris and no Simmons, and I'm not particularly concerned about Vooch defense. I think Embiid's an extremely strong player, and I don't know if he's going to be able to eclipse the Andre Drummond fantasy points, maybe to save his starting role. I don't know.
Get out of here.
Maybe Embiid will off the day off or whatever it was. I think he's going to have a really, really, really big game. So I consider him one of the probably one of the priorities today. So I like him a lot. And then with those guys out, you could continue to dip around with the Niang at 3,800, the Korkmaz at 4,300, maybe some others. I mean, with no Simmons and no Tobias Harris, there's wing minutes and guard minutes to disperse. So I didn't get to too much on Chicago, if anything. So for me, maybe a couple of Philly values, but definitely Embiid's got to be a top play, right?
He's certainly not going to rate as one. He's hurt. He's without a question. He's hurt. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I know they're saying he's going to play for sure. It would not surprise me if something happened before the game and he didn't end up playing.
Okay.
He hasn't played more than 33 minutes in the game this season. He hasn't put up 60 fantasy points in the game this season. Initially, my thoughts would be similar. He also, Vucevic has always given him an incredibly tough time.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, back to the fact that Vuce was a Sixer. Now he's had some big games there too as well, but so has Vuce. So yeah, and then as far as it goes with the Niang and Korkmaz, don't be convinced that Niang is necessarily going to get the 32 minutes. It's possible that he does, that he got against Portland, but he was playing well. They were running away on the second unit, and he didn't start in that game, and everybody's assuming that he's going to start tonight with Embiid back. So don't be sure about this. Like that doesn't need to work out that way. And if he's not starting, he's going to become a great play. If he's starting, he's going to become the cash play of everybody's thing. I would suggest that we take Korkmaz over him at the moment. And I think the other guys are in play, but probably not enough for me to get to in Milton and Maxey. I think Milton takes away enough for Maxey that it's harder. But I do think one of Niang or Korkmaz, but for me, it's probably going to end up being Korkmaz ahead of Niang, partially due to ownership. And I want to see how the starting lineup shakes out before I make my decision.
So we'll move ahead to Atlanta, Brooklyn. And I mean, I'll say this. I mean, James Harden at 10-2. If you told me James Harden was 10-2 against Trae Young.
But he's not against Trae Young. Let's be clear. He's going to be guarded by DeAndre Hunter or one of these guys. He's not Trae Young will only end up guarding him on a switch.
Okay. Well,
he'll never see Trae Young. He'll never see Trae Young. I promise you.
I see John Collins listed as questionable.
Legit questionable.
Which is definitely something interesting to keep an eye on. But for me, I mean, right now, Harden is one of these guys. I mean, he's in the mix. Harden, Embiid, Luka, Cat, Jokic, Curry. I mean, all these guys have and like, even though you haven't really seen these ceilings from these guys yet, except for Curry, obviously, when I needed him to not have one. The chance that all 5 of them don't do it is very, very slim. You have to think that someone's putting up 65 plus from this crew.
Yeah.
And Harden's definitely part of the hashtag crew. So I definitely like him. And you know what? Who's to say that Durant also doesn't have that possibility? He's more expensive, obviously. But I think ownership of both these guys is going to be very tame.
I don't think it will be on Harden. And I think Harden, with the way he's produced, probably should be like 5%, and he's going to be like 20%.
Oh, okay.
That would be my initial.
I have it like 12 to start, but okay.
Maybe, yeah. That's just my initial guess, because there's going to be more value and it's going to keep opening him up. Sorry,
okay.
Did I mean to interrupt you?
Yeah. So I'm, they'll be in my mix. I don't know if I can do the Durant thing, but we'll see. I don't have much. I mean, I should, right? I mean, look, if Collins is out, I'm supposed to play somebody. Maybe play Trae. I guess he's not. not showing up for me for some reason. I don't. Maybe I got to redo these projections for Atlanta. I think that's actually true. No, Trae Young, I just have as like kind of a pedestrian play today. I don't know what's going on, but I like if Capella's, God forbid, healthy with Collins out, then Capella becomes, I think, a smash play. I think. Just have to. This Collins news can be actually pretty important.
Yeah, so if Collins is out, love Capella. Trey gets a big boost also, but I way prefer Capella. I think that he'll become he averaged 46 fantasy points a game last year in games that Collins didn't play.
Okay.
And then you get Brooklyn on top of it, and the fact that he played 33 minutes in the last game while he got a minutes projection under 30 everywhere you look.
Yeah.
That all makes Capella. So Capella, if no Collins, is one thing I know I'm going to do today. You also have a rightfully cheap DeAndre Hunter, who's again a better real life player than he is a fantasy player, especially on a team that's got these guys just roll so deep. You know what I mean? You've got so many guys who can play so deep. But I do think Bogdanovic's minutes are very secure, and at 5,100, he's interesting to me. But it's just a matter of where we weigh him in on the whole thing. I will say that James Harden is not in shape. He cannot beat anyone off the dribble. He's too fat to, and he's not going to get the foul calls that he used to. So you're going to see him shooting the ball less, but he's going to probably pick up more assists and more rebounds than he usually does as well. And he always gets tons of assists, but I think you're going to start seeing him play more of that role. I think at home especially, I do think he or Durant are a good way to go. My natural thing would be to try and play Durant, who actually looks like he's there and in shape. But having said that, even with Harden and his struggles, like he scored 52 and 56 in the last two games. There's obviously always a ceiling with these guys. So Durant or Harden, and if no Collins, maybe a Capella and Trey run back is the right thing to do. Although I don't feel as great about Trey as just with how deep that team is. And he's not the only shot creator. You got Bogdanovich out there also, which is going to kill his upside. Trey's best year ever was last year by far. And his upside was killed. His fantasy production was down. You know what I mean? He wasn't having those outbursts. But anyway, so I like the Capella. And right now I would lean Capella, Durant, if no Collins. And I would certainly consider Trey. You want to start out with Denver?
Yeah, Denver, Memphis. Oh man, I just noticed who I might have to play. Why am I sighing? Anyway, Jokic looks like a very, very strong play. He's always a strong play. However, he is 11-4. I think that Curry at 11-1 in his situation is going to be a lot. I like him more, I think, than Jokic. Because do we not get to play freaking Steven Adams at 4,400?
Yeah,
I mean, they're going to need him, right?
We just had this matchup. We should probably lead with this matchup. This game just happened the other day. It was the most they played each other 2 days ago. So
give me 30 minutes at 4,500.
I'll take it, even though he was terrible in the last one. But at the same time, Jokic is terrible against him every time he plays him. So Steven Adams is still one of the better one-on-one defenders for a guy like Jokic in the NBA, believe it or not. And you want small athleticism, or you want the strongest man in the NBA, which is Steven Adams. So that's my issue with Jokic. Is in general, I feel the best about him mostly being over that 55-60 range of anybody on the slate. Like he's the most consistently going to be there. He didn't get there the other day, and at this price, you want the 60 more than you want the 55. So it's a little tricky for me. I still think Michael Porter Jr. is going to look at, on the initial, sheets, he's going to pop off. Still hasn't put up more than 34 in a game this season. And even that game, he shot the ball well, seems to be very differential, not quite himself. I still think he's always going to be a good wild card tournament play, but I don't want to play him as reasonable chalk. Aaron Gordon at 5K is reasonable. He's 6X the other night. He's going to do that a huge portion of the time here, in my opinion. Will Barton, these guys are all reasonable plays. I don't have anything to specifically love about any of them. And on the Memphis side, I really I think that the Jaren Jackson Jr., if people are afraid of playing him because of the foul troubles thing, which is a real thing, it's a real issue of his, but I just think 5,500 is too cheap for him. And I will definitely make a priority of playing Jaren Jackson Jr. And I will have Steven Adams in there as well, not necessarily in the same lineups, but I do like both those guys. I do really worry about the Jaren Jackson foul stuff, but I can't. I mean, it's really bad. It's the worst in the history of basketball, if you want to know. You know, we don't generally talk about worrying about foul trouble, but for a guy who is the worst foul rate in the history of the NBA, and he's had it every year, and you think he'd get better, it is worrisome. I like Bain and Adams. I would probably rank it Jackson, Adams, Bain, but I like all three of them. So
we don't like Ja.
And I'm fine with Ja. I like Ja. I think he's a better play probably at the moment than he's probably right there with Lillard and Trae Young.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the only thing that's hard is you'd think at least that Ja has like a supporting cast that goes like 8 deep that can all sort of do things. Even Tyus Jones had a monster game the other night here. He put up 39 fantasy points against Denver last night when they played. And that was when Ja was questionable, but Ja played and also put up 49 or whatever. Yeah, I think Jaren Jackson, Adams, Bain, and then Ja would be my preferred interest. And I do like Jokic some. I'm just going to have to decide whether I want to go there in what's a really tough matchup for him against Steven Adams.
So with D'Angelo Russell out, all these Minnesota guys rate to be top plays. So we'll have to talk through some of them, throughout the course of the day as well. But I'll just kind of list them off. Jordan McLaughlin at a flat 3K rates to be my top one, like for now. That Malik Beasley 4,100, Jared Vanderbilt at 3,600, and then even Patrick Beverly at 3,700. So all of these guys for me rate to be good point per dollar plays, and the existing, and then Jaden McDaniels, nothing wrong with him either at 3,300. So all these guys, that value is all pretty strong, which opens up builds to be able to play multiple, two of those bigger price guys that we talked about. On the Clippers, the two guys that rate to be decent values for me, at least, are somebody we are not allowed to mention because we're not going to play him, and also Nicholas Batum at 4,300. So
Hartenstein.
Anyway,
your plan is to go in this slate and play Hartenstein. I think you're making a big mistake.
Yeah. I'm gonna give you full disclosure. He's gonna show up as a good play for me, and I'm not.
It makes sense. He's getting minutes, and they play big and all that stuff. I get it, but why not just play Zubac?
Why not just play Zubac? That is a good question.
They haven't needed to play Zubac against a real big, and maybe against a real big where they do, you can get a game out of him. It's a real big that gives up tons of fantasy points. We might have to revisit Cleveland because I believe Markkanen may be out, which now is putting them shorter in the front court. So we're probably going to want to do some things, but we'll look at the things. The guy who I like, so I like Nick Batum.
Yeah.
And I really like Terrence Mann.
Ooh, there you go. That's something.
I think it's a Terrence Mann type of game. They're giving him the minutes now. He can do it by a million different ways on the court, and he also doesn't have to do it because he's a really good defender, so he could be out there just defending. But still, I just really like him now that he's getting the minutes. I think Reggie Jackson is going to break a slate soon. He just can't. Once he makes a shot, he'll break a slate. They do have a lot of guys here that sort of all you could make that same argument for, including guys all the way down to like Bledsoe. And I just don't think I really want to necessarily play roulette with it, but I do think Mann and Batum stand out the most. What's interesting is that no one will play Kennard because he didn't do much the other night, I guess, and he's a little bit more expensive. But he is kind of maybe your pivot if you're going to get away from those guys, because I do think Batum and Mann will each be like double-digit owned, whereas Kennard I think is going to be like 1 or 2%, and Zubac is the other one who's like that. So I don't love anything on the Clippers, but those are the guys who I'm sort of considering for value. We just have a lot of other guys they're up against. And it's not me questioning them failing or succeeding. It's just me measuring them against the others. Malik Beasley is the preferred option on Minnesota, in my opinion. I love Karl Anthony Towns. I think this benefits him. And there's no way you're gonna get me playing Patrick Beverley against his former team. I wish it was in LA. First of all, he's been over 21 fantasy points in every game he's played anyway. And now you eliminate the actual point guard. If his minutes creep up to like 28 or 30, you could see him explode, especially because he has these weird hot streaks. People don't realize Patrick Beverley, he's a defender, he can't do all this and that. The guy was like I think he's like the second all-time leading high school basketball player in history. I know, and going back, he has the ability to jack up shots when you don't expect it really. And if he gets a little bit hot and can get his field goal attempts in the double digits, that'd be interesting. But also he's had like his last, 4 out of 5 games this year, 5 assists, 7 assists, 6 assists. There's some upside and some floor for him here. So I'm sort of leaning Beverly over the very highly owned McLaughlin at this point. And I like I'm not especially interested in Vanderbilt or McDaniels, but either one of those guys could easily put up a game. But right now I'm leaning Beverly, Towns, and Beasley as my favorites, which does make me want to run it back with Paul George a little bit. But there's just a lot of guys in that range, and Paul George rates a little worse than all of them. I still think it's a good enough spot where maybe we should consider Paul George and getting a little game stack here. So.
Yeah. Now, would you play or would you shy away from playing Batum and Man together somehow?
I don't see why you would really want to be doing that.
I'm sorry if you were trying to stack the game so much, but okay.
Yeah, I guess if you're stacking the game, well, then if you're stacking the game, I would consider it. But I don't think that it's not like those two correlate together well. They definitely don't.
I seem to think of one being on the court when the other's not on the court.
No, they'll both be on the court at the same time, but they're going to take away from each other. It's not like these guys are shot creators for each other. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but it's a good game environment. Should be. My initial take was I would kind of like the over in that game. It feels a little low to me. And then this is the whole back-to-back situation we're going to have to figure out, and we're not going to know about it possibly before lock. That we're leading into Kristaps, and what do we do? What happens with Kristaps? That's a big one for me, because I think Luka at 10-7. I understand that. I mean, last night was a nightmare matchup. They're coming off a tough loss, where they got kind of beaten up. Luka actually played pretty well. His assist numbers are way down thanks to Jason Kidd trying to instill new offenses and do stupid things that he does. Terrible hire. Luka, Jalen Brunson, if there's no Kristaps. Right now I have Kristaps as legit questionable. Jalen Brunson, especially on FanDuel. And by the way, Jalen Brunson is probably playable even if Kristaps plays. That he's really been good, and he's always got a ceiling. But you're probably reaching a little bit considering it's not going to rate as well as some of these other guys. Dwight Powell is not the one you want to be playing, in my opinion. I just don't see any reason why they need to play him a ton. If Kristaps is out, we can reconsider it. But even with Kristaps out, it's not like he's doing enough to really be excited about playing him. Luka would really stand out price-wise, but you have to remember second of a back-to-back and travel, and he's out of shape. And he's got a coach that's not allowing him to fully succeed to his best ability. And they're playing slower. Those are all the reasons why I'm not as excited about it. In general, just at 10-7, when I see the price, he feels like the one who's too cheap to me of everybody on the slate. And I can't get to anything on the San Antonio side of things, although it wouldn't surprise me if Podol had a nice game.
Yeah, San Antonio is barely touching my sheet. I don't like anything over there. And on Dallas, same comment I always have. I think there is going to be a game where Luka pops off, just because he's one of the best players in the NBA. And in spite of Jason Kidd, whatever it is, I agree with you. I don't think is particularly the one to target, especially on a slate where there is competition for those points. You know what I mean? So I'm probably with you as being very iffy. Let's put it that way. On Luka on a back-to-back. For all the reasons you just mentioned, I don't have to repeat them all again. So I'll probably stay off of that, or at least be significantly under the field on it if I played like 20 lineups. And that's pretty much all I have. I don't really have much. I don't want to play Dwight Powell. If Kristaps plays, maybe I'll play him on FanDuel, presuming he's still cheap over there. I'll just have to take a look at that.
Yeah, if Kristaps plays, I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
It's that kind of confidence that people should really be jumping on.
Well, this is the thing, though, is like it's hard these days early in the day to have confidence. I mean, one of the plays we liked early on has already been scratched during the show. Like, it's hard to know who's playing. All right, so if you want to do something weird, which actually isn't that weird, if I said to someone who knows basketball but doesn't know all the prices in DFS and everything, I would say that the natural thing to do would be play LaMelo on one side and play Curry on the other side. Charlotte's defense is a little suspect. Golden State will play fast. Charlotte will play fast. I think this is an interesting spot, and I know LaMelo's price, but Sheets. I mean, look, coming from a guy who just won the monster with LaMelo, like we said the other night, it feels like overpaying for LaMelo, which is why people aren't going to play him. And LaMelo, I don't know what it is, man. So it happens when people play him too, but mostly when people don't play him, I feel like that's when he really goes nuts. And he went completely nuts the other night. And this is the kind of matchup I could see him doing it again. There's also a lot of interesting little narrative because obviously the Warriors could have taken LaMelo and would probably be much happier today had they done so. But that's a really interesting, would have been, just from last year. Other than that, it's hard to justify outside of it being a high-paced game. LaMelo has the heat check ability. I think Terry Rozier is a little bit interesting, but it's hard for me to have too much interest in anyone not named LaMelo here. And Gordon Hayward can get you 40, but I don't know if he can really have this field 50 ceiling, which a lot of guys in his price range do. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that I really like Curry, but would it surprise me if he just has a nice manageable game and they cruise to victory? No, like he puts up 35 or 40 fantasy points. But I do like the upside for him in this kind of a matchup, and I think he could go nuts. So I have Curry again. It's going to be hard to rate all my top guys, but Curry is definitely one of them.
Yeah, I'm fully into your idea. That was my first look at when I looked at this slate, and I saw that there was so much bunching in projections and so little separating them. I was gonna that's exactly what I was gonna do. I was gonna say, this is gonna be a fun freaking game. You got LaMelo going into Golden State. You have LaMelo who wants to show off against Curry. You have Curry who wants to teach the young kid. You know what I mean? Not so fast. I think those two could put on a show. I do. And yes, there is a variation where Golden State is much better and the game is just a kind of a slogger and they're all sitting in the fourth quarter and Curry just does enough to win at 50, getting 50 or whatever it is. But there are variations where this goes to freaking overtime. The two of them combine for 150. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like 150 to 144 or something like that.
Yeah, so I meant the two of them combine for 150 fantasy points. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I think that is definitely in the offing here. Is it likely going to happen? No, but I definitely think that certainly can win GPPs. Not to mention the fact that it's a late game. I'm in there, and just for what it is, and I do have Curry is rated the top play, and he's the one that's been just always seeming to do it. You know what I mean? All these other guys between Jokic and Luka and Embiid and Harden and whatever, they've all been like, whoa, what's going? Dude, Curry just shows up and freaking just does his freaking thing. You know what I mean? And we talked about this a couple of times. He's getting some rebounds too. If you need that, you need him getting rebounds like a hole in the head if you're fading him. You know what I mean? And so it's I'm in there. I really think that Curry's downside is really just limited to the blowout risk in this game. You know what I mean? I really feel that. So the Rozier thing, I think that maybe I'm being too narrative oriented. I think that on a different matchup, maybe Rozier gets more of it. But I think LaMelo is gonna try to do something.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's my counterpoint to our what we both like is what about playing Terry Rozier and Draymond Green? I think this is an unbelievable Draymond Green spot that if we actually weren't just looking on, it's so natural to want to go stars and scrubs. I just feel like Draymond Green is always getting 40 to 50 here. Like you have a team that can't guard power forwards, a power forward who runs the offense, who keeps like nearly triple doubling every game, which is actually taking away some of Curry's production. And honestly, like Curry has had plenty of games lately that have been bust. Well, not plenty. He's had 2 out of his last 3 have been 39 and 38 fantasy points. But those were blowout. Well, no, one was a blowout. The other one wasn't. Yeah, I like all of this, but I really want to highlight that I don't think I want to play Curry and Green together because they don't tend to correlate very well as far as ceiling games go. But I really do like Draymond Green. So if you're not playing Curry, I do think Draymond Green is really interesting, and I think that Rozier is interesting as opposed to Ball. So
well, that's no fun what you just said.
Those are great. What? Those are great, like double two-man stacks for things for a guy who doesn't like anything on this slate.
Well, no, what I was going to say, if you look at my screen, I was going to play all 4 of those cats in the same line. I was going to play Curry and Green and Rozier and LaMelo, realizing that one's taken away from the other in the Rozier and Melo thing. And Green and Curry, whatever, put 4 of them at the dude. Let me tell you something. You play these freaking 4 Memphis values or whatever it is, and then they get there, and you're sitting there with Golden State Charlotte, a tie game with 3 minutes to go, with overtime, about to win you 100,000. I mean, that's going to be a good spot.
You just need but like it's always rough. I mean, I could say that for every game with overtime, though, right? Like last game, I could definitely say that about.
That's
but I do agree. I think that the games that you're targeting the most tonight are the ones we talked about.
A huge slate. I mean, you can't. I don't think you can get away with this.
No, it would be tough. But again, if it works out, it's pretty amazing.
Right?
You don't need to go that crazy with it, but it does work though.
Hey, how did your buddy Hield? How did Buddy Hield work out last night?
He was good. He had like 7x. He was
nice.
Like 35 something.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, he was the highest scoring fantasy guy on Sacramento, I think. And he
right. So as far as this last game, I think that 2 guys that stand out for me.
Well, wait a minute. We have to talk about Brandon Ingram and Herbert Jones, both possibly not playing.
Oh, I was just presuming they weren't.
Oh, okay. You were assuming both of them were Herbert Jones too.
It says, right. Oh, I didn't see the Herbert Jones. Again, I'm just based on what, do I have Herbert Jones projected? I don't think I do. So I'm just presuming him out for now, I guess. Oh, so we got to do other stuff there. Okay. Yeah. So talk me through this, because my initial take was just, was Valanciunas is a good play, and Holmes is a good play. that was going to be my takes on this game. So talk me through this Herbert Jones thing and Brandon Ingram out and all that.
So that's going to open up a ton of minutes if Brandon Ingram is out again and if Herbert Jones doesn't play. My guess is Trey Murphy, who started the second half last night and played reasonably well, the rookie. I think he'll probably take a starting role and have a significant impact, and will show up as one of the better values. Now, I don't know when we're going to have this information, so that's really important, and that's tough. So you're going to have to speculate a little bit. Josh Hart will also become one of the better plays on the slate. Josh Hart, as I called last night, was terrific, and I think that I think this is a perfect game environment for him. He put up 35-4 last night. I really like Josh Hart. If Ingram and Herbert Jones are out, I love Josh Hart. If just Ingram is out, I still like Josh Hart.
What's his price, Josh Hart?
4,900 on DraftKings.
So the problem is, again, you're going to have to make these decisions on these Minnesota guys at 8:00.
Who's the Minnesota guys that we need to play over Josh Hart if those guys are out?
But we don't know that the
right.
guys will be out.
No, you mean if we don't know about Ingram and Herbert Jones? Well, hopefully we'll have more information on that at 6 Eastern. And just even if it's like last night, we realized Ingram wasn't going to play before the game happened. So tonight we hopefully will have similar type of thing. I think Joe Val is like, this is getting to the point where we have to just kind of like almost plug him in. Like, right. I mean, talk about consistency. This guy has gone 53, 60, 43, 49, 40, 51, and 50. Now, I would say that historically he's been a very, very poor back-to-back player. Really
back games. Okay.
Yeah, but he's done it this year, and in the 2 games he did this year, he put up 51 and 53. And you have a team in Sacramento that will bleed points to the center position. We had no Ayton to prove it last. It was Gobert last night. No offensive center to prove it last night. But I think that this is a really, I'm very interested in Joe Val. And I think that some of the higher end guys who are going to talk about how bad he is on back-to-back historically, may not be looking at his current recent role if there's no Ingram, if there's no Herbert Jones. I also worry for both these. I mean, I worry for New Orleans that they can get just shellacked. I also think that Sacramento is coming out of a back-to-back too, and they're traveling back home. So kind of a tricky situation. Davion Mitchell coming off the big game, for whatever reason, played actually really, really well defensively, real life, even though it didn't show up in the stat because Donovan Mitchell went crazy. But he's just a really good player, but I don't think that he should be played at this high of ownership without any like extra bodies that aren't going to be there. So I think he's going to project really well. I don't know how much I'm going to be a part of that, even though I like the kid as a real player, but it is a back-to-back. And then it's really hard for me on the Sacramento side after him. I don't mind like jump shooters on back-to-backs, not usually my favorite thing to do. Buddy Hield is still not shooting the ball quite as much as I'd like him to, which would be every time. But I think he's in play. It's his former team. He's played really well against them in the past. His former team, the team that gave up on him and traded him, I should say. But I don't know. It's hard to find anyone outside of Holmes and Joe Val who makes sense at this particular moment. And I would have to double check Holmes's back-to-back history, as I'm not quite as familiar with it as I am some of the other guys. But I don't think Holmes is a must, and I like the center position. So I think Joe Val would be the one I'd be looking to play from this game of everybody. We're going to have to see on this other stuff because Nickeil Alexander-Walker would be a great play on FanDuel, especially if those guys are out. He had a really, really, really bad game last night, and I don't think anyone's going to play him. But Josh Hart, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, these guys, Devontae Graham, and Joe Val would all be heavily in play, and Trey Murphy if Herbert Jones and Ingram are out, because their team is just getting decimated at that point.
So it's a big slate.
Yeah, long story short, it's a big slate.
Yeah, it is a big slate, and I do think that that those, not having D'Angelo Russell, I mean, I think that's just at least a couple of people are going to get there from Minnesota. Starting with maybe just Cat, like you're saying. But we didn't even talk about Anthony Edwards at 8,600. Maybe he's not even. You think that 8,600 is a ridiculous price, but maybe it's not.
84, yeah.
So we'll watch the news. We'll be here at 6. We'll break it all down again. And
well, I do want to caution people though about that, because one thing is Malik Beasley is every bit as aggressive as D'Angelo Russell. So you might be losing minutes from one guy, but the other guy who's filling in the minutes is more aggressive. Now, Jordan McLaughlin is not. Neither is Patrick Beverly.
Right.
But Malik Beasley is, and he hasn't been playing as many minutes with Russell out there. So, I like that game. I like it as an attempted stack. You play one of the Batum man Kennard with either Jackson or Paul George as their run back, or even Zubac as your run back with Towns, Beasley, and one of McLaughlin or Beverly. And I think that's a really interesting game to stack if you're going to look that route. I also have the plays that did stand out to me. Capella, if no Collins, will be a priority for me. Embiid is probably going to be a priority if these ownerships don't last. I have to double check on that game real quick. What is the TV schedule tonight? Sorry to do this, but it actually does matter.
I don't know.
Let's see. We'll get back to that in just a second. But anyway, so I love Embiid. I still want to take another chance on Triple J. I think Malik Beasley, Joe Val I mentioned, Curry, the Golden State Charlotte game in general. LaMelo has a long shot play. Rozier has a more reasonable play, and Luka.
Ooh.
Those are the guys who I have circled.
So here's the national televised game. Ready?
Yeah.
ESPN, you have Hawks Nets with Trey and Harden, and the aforementioned LaMelo Curry.
Yeah, that game, it does sort of feel like tempting to go after it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I am concerned about this Embiid thing. And just keep an eye on this. That could change everything. Like, even though it doesn't say anything about him, it says he's going to play and everything. And just be ready for things. It's going to be a lot of weird news that comes out throughout the day. So It's always hard to get out these days in the NBA. It's hard to have the execs decided what you want to do at the beginning of the day. But as you pointed out, Sheets, being there at 6 p.m. has been certainly worthwhile. It was worthwhile for you the night before, and it was worthwhile for our members last night. So
that's good. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, guys, we'll be back with some more videos for talking about golf. We will talk about football, and let's make some money today, guys. Good luck to everybody.